Hello, gorgeous, and welcome to the Midlife Realignment. I'm your host, Esther Blum, and I'm here to disrupt the narrative on perimenopause and menopause with humor, nutrition, hormones, and fierce self-advocacy. Together, we'll rewrite your story and the rules because there's a light at the end of the vaginal tunnel. Let's go. McCall McPherson is a nationally recognized thyroid and hormone health expert, TEDx speaker, and founder of Modern Thyroid Clinic, Modern Weight Loss, and Thyroid Nation. A former thyroid patient herself, she has dedicated her career to fixing thyroid care worldwide by offering progressive treatments that go beyond standard protocols. Through her clinics, media features, and advocacy work, McCall has helped thousands finally feel like themselves again after years of mismanaged care. She believes that no one should still have thyroid symptoms, and she's made it her mission to ensure people get the treatment they deserve. McCall's work has earned national recognition, including being named to the Inc. 5000 and Inc. 500 female founders lists. And I was so thrilled to talk to her and have her bring you exceptional thyroid information and advocacy today. Enjoy the show. McCall, I have been following you for so long, and so I'm so grateful that you are taking time today to come on the Midlife Realignment podcast. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I would love to start off with your personal journey because to me that was really the genesis of all that you have built in your thyroid community.
Yeah, when I was 27, I had had a long-standing diagnosis with hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, and all of a sudden I was debilitated. I was already practicing medicine. And I was in bed 16 hours a day. I would come home from work at 3:30, be bedbound until work the next day. Weekends were the same. I was in that constant cycle that so many women get stuck in of trying to rest enough to recover from the day and rest enough in anticipation for the next day. And it was occupied my whole life. I had gained weight. I was losing hair. I was so puffy. I didn't even really recognize myself. And was already, again, practicing medicine. So I thought, oh my gosh, I just need an increase in my thyroid medication. My doctor will handle this. It'll be fine. Go to him and was completely blown off. One lab was run and I was sent on my way with instructions to eat less and exercise more. And oh, by the way, you 27-year-old young woman, here's a Lipitor prescription because your cholesterol's high, which was actually just high because of my thyroid issue. And I spent 9 months like that, and eventually, through the brain fog, found someone that I thought and hoped could help me. Waited months to see him, and he turned my life around. He looked deeper, took a more progressive approach, used different kinds of medications. 91% of people in America are on the same thyroid medication, different brand names, that will never work for a huge percentage of the population, and they're given no alternative. So from that, honestly, truly, Esther, I practiced integrative and functional psychiatry in my little practice for psychiatric conditions. I had treated enough treatment-resistant depression patients that actually were just depressed because of a thyroid problem. They took my information and blew it up all over thyroid advocacy platforms, and my psychiatry practice became a thyroid practice without ever intentionally doing so. And so at that point, I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing the wrong thing. Like all these patients are coming in to see me, flying in to see me for thyroid. And from that, Modern Thyroid Clinic was born. And we were the first thyroid-specific practice out there. And we're so proud of what we've been able to build and the lives we've been able to change.
It's really profound, and you are really one of the lucky ones to have had such early intervention because women, as you know, and you see in your practice and hear the stories every day of how many years women have spent just in debilitating conditions. So I'm so grateful that you have really built out such a huge platform. And I want to ask you, when you say that one lab was run, What was the one lab that was run versus all the labs that need to be run that really paint a much more complete thyroid picture?
Yeah. So about 70 to 85% of the time in America, one lab is run to screen for and adjust medications for thyroid patients, and it's thyroid stimulating hormone. It's your TSH, which actually isn't a thyroid hormone at all. And by the way, is completely inaccurate for anyone on levothyroxine-based medications, which again is 91% of Americans on thyroid meds. Those are levothyroxine, Synthroid, Unithroid, Tirosint, Levoxyl. TSH is a piece of the puzzle, but it is meaningless in and of it on its own. I got a full thyroid panel, so I got TSH plus free T4. Your inactive hormone, also really important. Also, TSH plus free T4 is absolutely not enough to diagnose or manage someone's thyroid medication. Free T3 is our most important hormone. It is the hormone that our body uses to function and take action in pretty much most biochemical large processes that we need to thrive. Reverse T3 is another one. It's an inhibitory hormone, also a very important piece of the puzzle. And then antibodies, right? TPO and thyroglobulin antibodies. Everyone should have those checked. I've seen patients who've been treated for thyroid disorders for 20 years and they come to see us at Modern Thyroid Clinic and have never had their antibodies checked. So people need to get these labs run every single time they go in for a workup for their thyroid.
But what's so maddening is that this is not taught in medical school. Like TSH is such a poor excuse for lab tests. Why is that the gold standard? And why is the comprehensive panel not taught in medical school, and especially to endocrinologists?
I love that you made that distinction because I'll get, so I'm a PA, I'm a physician assistant now, we're called physician associates. And I get so much bullying online from people who are like, you're just not a doctor, so you aren't taught. I'm like, no, I've actually asked dozens of doctors if they were taught about free T3, reverse T3, full thyroid panels, how T3-based medications work. And all the way down to our clinical director, who's a board certified endocrinologist, was never taught basic thyroid physiology. And I think, honestly, it's a sad state of affairs in our country, specifically in the world of thyroid. And I think what we've seen happen for women and hormones and hormone replacement and, the removal of the study from the Women's Health Initiative being on this pedestal and that being completely reorganized and looked at in an entirely new way, and also kind of looking back at the previous generation with a lot of regret. Hey, we did these women a really big disservice by poorly analyzing the study and basing everything around it. Thyroid is the next Women's Health Initiative. We will look back at what we are doing right now in the world of thyroid diagnosis and management with deep, deep regret. What is bizarre is instead of us going deeper and looking more clearly at people's labs, using different medications, we are actually going the opposite direction. And what's happening in real time that I see in studies in my inbox almost on a daily basis is we are trying so hard to stratify patients out of treatment. And what I mean by that is we're taking people and we're saying, well, actually, this group of people doesn't need to be treated because they're subclinical hypothyroid. Let's put them in this wait and watch category. Oh, this group of people, let's put them there too. And that's all based on extraordinarily flawed data, couple studies from a few years ago. And I tell you, my passion project right now is looking at the long-term implications of subclinical hypothyroidism. What does that condition that we're saying no one needs to be treated for do to people's long-term health outcomes? And it is extraordinary. Just to give you a little tidbit, your chance of having a heart attack is increased by 68% if you have subclinical hypothyroidism. 68%. Your chance of dying of a cardiovascular event is increased by 37%. That's the number one cause of, death for men and women is cardiovascular events. Meanwhile, we're saying we don't need to treat you. We'll wait and watch. It's not bad enough to treat. And so many women I've heard, it's just mild. We'll check it again next year. Well, I can tell you, I have the data that is not good enough, and it is wildly dangerous for long-term health.
I'm just like, I'm just taking that in right now. It is
Yeah.
shocking. And also, from my understanding and looking into, where blood standards came from to begin with, they're based on suboptimally healthy people. They're not based on healthy populations, which is what functional medicine labs are based on. But also, I have read and seen that they are based on the data of men, not women's physiology. Are you seeing that gap as much? Or am
You
I?
know, you're spot on in that. Look, like, it's based on a poor patient population selection to create the definition of what is normal. And I think what people, and probably to a degree clinicians, don't even realize is, when you go to the lab and you have your blood sugar drawn, there is a standardized range for where your hemoglobin A1C should be that is nationally accepted, right? Ranges that say you're normal, you're pre-diabetic, you're diabetic. The same with your cholesterol, the same with your inflammatory markers, your kidney function. That is not the case in the world of thyroid. And so what's happening is we are leaving normal, like telling a patient if they're normal or not, based solely around the lab that they go to's definition of normal. And I want to unpack this a little bit. It's not necessarily that in the world of thyroid it's only based on men. That's more in research. This is real life experience of, one, there isn't a set normal range. So LabCorp's normal is different than Quest, is different than your local hospital, and LabCorp by my house is different than LabCorp by my office. So it's not even across populations and county, nothing. Like, they vary constantly. And the dynamic that creates is when you go see your doctor pulls up your labs and they just simply scan it and see if you're in bold or off to the side, right? So if you're not, your doctor or your clinician says, hey, you're normal, you don't need thyroid medication, or we don't need to adjust your meds, go on your way. Well, the situation that creates is, number one, a patient A can come in with a TSH of 4.8 and their doctor can say, your labs are normal because Quest includes that in a normal range. Patient B can go in immediately after, the same doctor, same result, TSH of 4.8. But they went to the local hospital and guess what? Their ranges are more narrow, so now they get treatment. So we're not using a lot of independent thinking. And just to take it one step further, like nail in the coffin, right? If we are going to base medical decisions and what is normal based on patients in a database, averages of them, that's what LabCorp does, that's what Quest does. They take averages of a bunch of people in their patient population, take out the very top, take out the very bottom, create averages, and there's your normal, right? So if we're going to base what we're aiming for on that, we should probably ask ourselves, who's going to the lab, right? Is it people who feel so great on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon that they're going to take a half of a day off of work, head down to LabCorp? I'm just so curious what my thyroid is because I feel so great. It's not those people. It's sick people. They're looking for answers. They're looking for help. So now we are basing normal ranges on sick people going to the lab, searching for answers and ways to get well. And that's not good enough. And what we found at Modern Thyroid Clinic is not only is that not good enough, these people actually need to be in incredibly narrow, perfect, essentially margins. We started 10 years ago with functional medicine ranges, and that wasn't enough either. I can tell you we've evolved a world from there. So it's just underestimated how nuanced this is. But when you get it right, the lights come on and people get their lives back.
Yeah. Well, and also, aren't there the subset of people you treat who look perfect on paper, even in your really tight optimal ranges, and still don't feel 100%? Do you also have a subset of those patients that you're treating where, the data is one thing, but the human in front of you is another, and you treat accordingly?
Yeah, I mean, and I think, look, like, if all we had to do was help women with their thyroid problems when they come to Modern Thyroid Clinic, our job would be very easy, but by the time you have 10 years of thyroid dysfunction, it's unraveled a world of dysfunction in your hormones, in your adrenals, in your metabolism, in your inflammation, in your blood sugar regulation. And so fixing thyroid in isolation is not enough because it impacts every part of our body. And so most women need more. Women deserve more. We have to look at all these cogwheels to help them get to their highest form of health. So I completely agree.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of those cogwheels. Like, I would love for you to talk about, there's two big intersections that I see with women and thyroid. One is obviously gut function, and one is hormone changes like perimenopause and menopause. So, can you talk about the work you do when those cogs are, or the wheels have fallen off the bus? The cogs aren't even there anymore. How do you approach it? Where do you start with those women who come in? And how do we know what's chicken and what's the egg?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So, look, like our job, our goal, our mission at Modern Thyroid Clinic is first to make women feel better. By the time people come to see us, we really kind of are. We're like the last ditch effort place. They're like, well, I've tried everything else. Let's go see this McCall ladies clinic and see if they can actually help me. Right. And so they can really barely function. They have a hard time doing basic things at home, being awake by the time their kids come home from school. Yeah. They'll get up, take them to school, spend all day in bed so that they can be awake by the time they come home, and so on and so forth. Underperforming at work, all of it. Surviving, right? They're surviving. So the last thing we try to do when they come to see us is tell them, hey, you're going to go autoimmune paleo for the rest of your life. Good luck. You're going to do all this. Oh, by the way, exercise 5 days a week. We don't do that. So our first goal is, hey, let's make them feel better. Let's give them leverage, energy, capacity, motivation to make the changes they need. That doesn't usually take long when you start to influence someone's thyroid hormones in the right way. So that's where we start. Then really quickly, we move on to hormones, gut health. Let's start with the gut health part of the conversation. We would actually do it inversely. We would start with hormones because, again, that creates more leverage, more energy, more capacity. Yeah. So we want to give people the ability to do the work, not make them pull up their bootstraps and do it. But gut health is a huge role in Hashimoto's. So Hashimoto's can be influenced. We can put it into remission in some cases. I myself have been in remission for over 12 years. I used to have a massive goiter from my Hashimoto's. I don't have that anymore. But inflammation, so much of the root of it can start at the gut, right? And so if we can fix the gut, whether it's addressing a yeast issue, whether it's inflammatory food, whether it's an imbalance of good and bad bacteria, etc., that can then lower Hashimoto's antibodies, which has quite a bit of positive impacts. The egg, the chicken or the egg scenario is poor gut health also keeps your thyroid hormones from activating. So think about that T4 hormone like crude oil. It's inactive. T4 is what all levothyroxine-based meds are. So it's an inactive hormone like crude oil. We don't put crude oil in our car to make it go, but we do need it to make gasoline to put in our car to make it go, right? But we've got to convert it first. We have to activate it first to make it usable. And when we are inflamed, when we have a lot of gut inflammation, other things as well, we halt the activation of that hormone. And it makes us tired, fatigued, dry skin, low libido, hair loss, depression, constipation, all the things, okay? And so if we can intervene, we impact that bidirectionally. And I almost don't think about it as chicken or egg. I think about it as both and. Like you really have to address it for both aspects. And then the hormonal piece, gosh, even before we hit perimenopause, most thyroid people first lose testosterone. So pretty early on, I'll blow your mind, but I would estimate 95% of patients when they come to Modern Thyroid Clinic have an extraordinarily low level of testosterone, a lot of times undetectable by labs. So very quickly, testosterone loss happens. That leads to loss of stamina, low libido, lower motivation, poorer exercise recovery, lower muscle mass, difficulty building muscle mass. So that happens right away. I mean, not right away, but first few years that most people don't even know they have a thyroid issue, right? Secondary to that, we start losing progesterone. And these women are anxious, irritated, not sleeping, have heavy periods, crampy periods, sometimes recurrent pregnancy losses, difficulty with fertility, and migraines sometimes, just raging PMS, basically. Raging PMS. It's extremely uncomfortable, very fixable, but again, extremely, extremely common in the world of thyroid dysfunction. So they end up with estrogen dominance, and then we move into perimenopause. All of those things kind of continue, but maybe the rage heightens, the testosterone symptoms worsen, and it's, we do have to address the thyroid piece, but my goodness, we also have to address those hormones independently if we want to truly serve and help these women. And then in menopause, hormone shifts create increases in incidence of Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism. So, that chicken or egg scenario applies here too. Yeah. We have an increased rate of developing thyroid dysfunction when we hit puberty, when we're pregnant, when we're breastfeeding, when we're perimenopausal, when we're menopausal. And so that's kind of why I say, look, by the time you hit menopause, it's not a matter of if you're going to have a thyroid problem, it's just a matter of when. And if no one is properly screening you, you'll miss out on so much life trying to survive and being robbed of so many of the joyous experiences that happen when you feel good.
You know your body. When you think your hormones are off, you're right. When you think your gut function is off, you're right. In 30 years of practice, every woman who came to me knowing something was wrong was always right. My Make Menopause Your Bitch Elite program is where we do targeted testing that makes it impossible for you to fail. I look at your blood work, Dutch, and GI map tests and build a targeted protocol based on what's happening in your body. You come in exhausted and dismissed, and you leave knowing exactly what to do. Apply at estherblum.com/MMYB. You don't have to suffer, and you don't have to do this alone. Apply at estherblum.com/MMYB. It's so, this is why early intervention is so important, because the thyroid gets hit so incredibly hard when those estrogen receptors are not getting their hit of estrogen. Why do you think testosterone, I know testosterone starts dropping in our 30s, but why do you think it hits so especially hard for women with thyroid issues across the board?
Yeah. I think thyroid issues decrease hormone production. They do. They slow hormone production. And think about testosterone for women. Our testosterone range for women is, optimally like 35 to about 65. But the range normally will go down to about 0 to 12 before you get flagged in conventional models as being low. Our estrogen, for example, goes from, 30 to 400 on average in most cases. So if we start losing hormones, guess what's going to go first? Because the starting point is so much higher with estrogen, testosterone so much lower, it goes very quickly. Progesterone's like 2 to 26. So again, really early, we're going to lose those and estrogen's just going to dominate. The other reason too is kind of two-factor. Our adrenals are impacted very early on with thyroid dysfunction. In fact, pretty much every thyroid patient we see has some sort of adrenal dysfunction that must be addressed. Yeah. And our adrenals are responsible in part for making our testosterone. And so as they get depleted, worn down, overworked, overused, we lose testosterone pretty quickly. So that's another reason. And lastly, we're not meant to procreate when our body is really stressed, when we're not healthy, when we're not at our prime. Yeah. And lowering testosterone is a way that our body can do that naturally, just keep us from procreating because we don't have a sex drive anymore.
Yeah. Isn't the body just incredible? It's absolutely incredible what happens. So thank you for, just explaining it. And I do love that you put hormones first to get women functional again, to get them upright, to get them functional on 8 hours of sleep versus 16. Those are life-changing when you have to show up for a job and earn money when you have a family to take care of and you can't always sleep all day. It just doesn't work for a lot of people. And
Right.
aside from the fact that you miss out on life, I mean, there's so much you miss out on when you can't get out of bed. So if
Yeah.
you can restore women to their former glory when they were up, when they were about, when they were energized, like, oh my gosh. So I have a couple of thyroid adjacent questions for a minute.
Yeah.
One is, can you talk about how trauma informs thyroid function? Because it is in our throat chakra. It is where our truth gets spoken. And I would love to know from your perspective what you see in your practice.
Yeah. I think honestly, it's a little out of my wheelhouse, but I will share with you a couple of thoughts that I have, right? I'm not an expert in that by any measure of the word, but I will say, look, in medicine, we're not great at documenting that connection, mind body, trauma body, but it is known and accepted based on research. If you have a traumatic event in your childhood, your chance of developing an autoimmune disease in later life is increased by 80%. So there you have it. I mean, that speaks pretty loudly. About 80 to 90% of hypothyroidism is due to Hashimoto's, the autoimmune disease associated with thyroid dysfunction. And so look, like if you have a traumatic event, you are primed and set up to struggle with this later on. And I don't routinely screen our patients for trauma. Maybe it's something I should add, but I will say when our nervous system is heightened, which is the normal kind of physiological response for people post-trauma that goes on kind of often for the rest of our lives, our sympathetic, our stress-based hormones in our nervous system are overactive, they're overreactive. That significantly halts, again, the activation of your thyroid hormones. And I'll tell you, medicine doesn't really realize this. They don't acknowledge it because they're not running labs to see it day in and day out. 100% of the patients that come to Modern Thyroid Clinic have difficulty in that step, taking their crude oil hormone and making it into gasoline to making it usable. There's, again, a lot of things that impact that. Gut health was one of them. Stress, activation of our nervous systems, post-PTSD is another one. And so the impact is great if we can intervene enough to make an impact at that step.
Yeah, it's just powerful. It's another powerful tool because a lot of women don't realize it. We, especially ones who are in menopause now, are typically Gen Xers or boomers, and there were no tools or language. We're children of the 60s and 70s. We were, drinking from water hoses and riding bikes and you just saw a lot of crazy shit go down or crazy shit went down and wasn't really talked about or addressed. You just moved on with it. And a lot of, there was either repression or just, shoving it under the rug or just not having any tool set. But the nervous system really keeps score on that. And if we don't address this by the time we get to midlife, yes, autoimmune conditions pop up, heart disease pops up, thyroid conditions, thyroid cancers pop up. It is a very real thing. So that's why healing is so, so, so important. I have so many clients who have been horribly abused, sexually, emotionally, some physically, and many have had their thyroids out or they've had thyroid cancer. And there is a real connection. It's a real midlife reckoning and a real opportunity to heal. And the gut, having your gut optimized and producing those neurotransmitters is great. Replenishing your hormones is really important. But the nervous system also has to regulate. Otherwise, it is harder to convert T4 to T3 and address those pieces. So let's talk about your medication dosing, because you are not just doling out levothyroxine or Synthroid. That's not really getting to the root of the root. So Can you talk about some of your treatment protocols that are not really in a standardized medicine practice, but that is seen more commonly in functional medicine
Yeah,
practices?
there
Like,
is.
what options do they even need to know about that they don't even know are available that are life changing?
Amen. Such a good question. So, look, pretty much anyone listening to this who's on thyroid meds is on the inactive thyroid hormone. And again, I'll say the names because people get confused. It's levothyroxine, it's synthroid, it's tyrosine, it's unithroid, it's Levoxyl. Did I leave any out? I think that pretty much covers them. Think about it like crude oil, right? I could give you all the crude oil in the world, but if you can't convert it to gasoline, you're not going anywhere in your car, right? And so what we are doing in America, and honestly worldwide still, is we are prescribing exclusively crude oil hormones, presuming people can convert them to gasoline, put them in their car, and go somewhere. And I am telling you, people cannot do that. The vast majority of people cannot do that. And so they go back to their clinician. They think, I just need more crude oil. But you're just stockpiling more and more crude oil in your garage. Your gas tank continues to be on empty because it's not about how much crude oil we're giving you. It's about the fact that you can't take it, activate it, and make it usable and convert it into free T3. Crude oil hormone T4 does not impact our physiology at all. It is completely inert. And so no one's realizing this because, again, no one is checking your free T3 hormone. No one is checking your gasoline hormone, your inhibitory hormone, your reverse T3. We're all just walking around, head in the sand, assuming that it's working. And at Modern Thyroid Clinic, 100% of our patients are on some form of active thyroid hormone, some form of a T3 gasoline medication. These can be Cytomel, liothyronine, same medication, brand versus generic. It can be Armour thyroid. It can be Ren thyroid. NP is another form of desiccated thyroid that comes from pig thyroid gland. That's a blend of T4 and T3. So there isn't one size fits all for these people. Again, this is incredibly nuanced. We need to give you exactly what your unique biochemistry is missing in the way and the amount that it is missing to mimic your natural rhythm of T3 access that we would have throughout the day. And not only are people not being offered this, clinicians absolutely are not trained how to use these medications. And as a clinician, and as I've interviewed so many of my colleagues, we are actively trained to be afraid of them. So my training was never use T3 based meds, only use T4 crude oil hormone based meds. And if you put your patients on T3, you'll give them a heart attack and a stroke. And that is the myth that's being passed down still to this day in medicine. And I'll tell you, I've looked at the data. Higher normal levels of free T3 of active thyroid hormone correlate with lower cardiovascular events, lower mortality, lower risk of osteoporosis, osteopenia, all of which is beat into our brains that's what will happen if we use T3. Higher normal levels of T4, think levothyroxine-based meds, are associated with increased cardiovascular risk, higher mortality, higher incidence of osteoporosis, osteopenia, also lower socioeconomic status, earlier retirement. So that's just a slew of things. T3 is so positively beneficial in every way. And the thing that I like to tell people who are listening is, look, if you are going to your doctor and you are negotiating and begging for a full thyroid panel, and they finally oblige, you just hit the next barrier. They don't know how to interpret that panel. Right. If they try to pretend, then you hit the next barrier of, well, now I want some free T3 medication. They don't know how to use that. They're going to put you on the smallest possible amount that isn't going to help you. You don't need a lot, but you need the right amount. And you just are going to hit barrier after barrier. So my advice is always, look, find someone who this is their shtick. They know how to do this. This is what they do all day. They want to partner with you on your health journey where you are not constantly meeting resistance and having to over advocate for yourself when this is your body, your health. Yeah. So I always tell people, look, don't try to change the way that your clinician practices medicine. You'll never successfully do that. Find someone who practices medicine in a way that you align with and that can truly support you.
Yes. And often that means leaving the system, leaving the Western
It does.
system, jumping ship, going rogue to the functional medicine space. Are the T3 meds, in your experience, which are covered by insurance? Do they
Good
have to be
question.
compounded? Are they easily accessible?
Good question. So they do not need to be compounded. They can be. We do not compound any T3-based medication. Inevitably, you'll get a bad batch of compounded medication because we're dealing with micrograms. Hormones are milligrams. We use hormone compounds all day, every day, because that's possible to get reasonable consistency when you're dealing with milligrams. Micrograms are just too small of a unit, and I've seen lives get completely upturned because of poor compounding. They are all readily available at like Walgreens, CVS, everyday pharmacies. Sometimes insurance covers them, sometimes they don't. For example, I'm on Thyroid and Cytomel. It is cheaper for me to use GoodRx and pay for my medications, even though they're covered by insurance, than it is for me to actually just bill it under my insurance. So in the end, look, whatever dollar you spend on medication, whatever dollar you spend on seeing a functional medicine clinician out of your insurance network, you will get back 100 times in your productivity. Like, it is a very worthwhile return on your investment.
Yes, 100%. I was just going to say, yeah, you absolutely get an ROI when people are going to good providers. There's plenty of people who go to integrative providers who aren't truly integrative. So yes, call the office, find patients in their practice who are happy, ask what their experience is like. It's really, really important that, you do your due diligence there.
I agree. And look, like, in the world of functional medicine, people are going to work to try to help you. They're like on your side. They are on your team. They're invested. The flip side of that coin is they don't know really how to do nuanced thyroid treatment either. Like, I have hundreds of colleagues and close friends in the functional medicine world. What their approach is still not good enough. It's literally what we started with 10 years ago at Modern Thyroid Clinic. Yeah. Even though they have the best of intentions, it is complicated, it is nuanced. And so you want to find someone who really just mainly does thyroid care. And if you get stuck, if you can't find someone local, we took Modern Thyroid Clinic from a little brick and mortar practice in Austin with a 9,000 person wait list, and now we're in 48 states. So we are trying to open up. Yeah, we're really trying to create access for people irrespective of where they live.
Where are the states you're not in?
Rhode Island, and I think North Dakota and Arkansas, strangely enough. Those are just hard to open in telemedicine, and it's like very long and arduous process.
Okay, but that's so good to know. I didn't realize. I thought you were I have a provider directory for my private clients, and you are in it for Texas, but not. I didn't realize it was all over.
Thank you.
So I'm so grateful. Yes, now that is like kaboom. You just opened up the floodgates for, anyone listening, and certainly my practice as well. So that's fabulous. All right. So you have finished your book, or you're still writing your book? Tell us about it.
It's done. I actually have to give my final proofread today and turn it in. So it is Take Back Your Thyroid. It will be published with Penguin Random House, and the date that it releases is February 9th, 2027. And essentially, it is so much of the information from start to finish people ask me for all day, every day, with so much incredibly deep science. So there are so many darn footnotes that my publisher tried to make me put them online, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, we are leaving all of the science in here because we are trying to evolve an entire paradigm here, step by step, how to get your life back, even algorithms of medications, like no stone was left unturned, how to reverse your Hashimoto's, Graves', people post-thyroidectomy, literally everything. And right now, I have a special little promo. If you buy the book in pre-order, you can either get access to my Thyroid Empowered course, which has always been $399 for free, just with the price of the book, or you can get $150 off a new patient appointment at Modern Thyroid Clinic if you want to take the next step and get care. So I will absolutely put that link in your show notes. I think it's book.modernthyroidclinic.com, but I will firm it up and I will send it over to you to add to the
Okay,
to
we'll
the
have these
show
in the
notes.
show notes. So it's called, again, the Modern
Take Back Your Thyroid.
Take Back Your Thyroid. Okay.
Yes.
Well, and you know, I love it because I love your keeping the footnotes in there, because when you are working with providers, let's say there's a provider you love and you're like, oh, I just want them to prescribe my thyroid medication. Then you can give the book to your provider, and you may not change how they're practicing, but you may, and you may also give them the tools that they need to help other women. These women who read your book will become thyroid ambassadors. And that's what we need, because medicine now, it's not a top-down approach. It's a grassroots collective of women fighting for their lives. And I read a statistic this week that women spend an average of 864 hours between going to appointments, doing research online, trying to crack the code just for perimenopause and menopause, not even thyroid. So you add in thyroid, that number probably doubles. And so it's really important, like you say, that you invest in your time. Your time is your greatest currency, as are your financials, and you invest in a place where you're going to get an ROI. And that means getting out of bed, having energy, mental clarity, feeling present in your own life, pooping every day, not having handfuls of hair in the shower, having gas in your tank again, having a libido, just feeling like you're back online and firing on all cylinders. That's the ROI. So versus living, like I always joke with my friends, you feel like the dead lady in the bathtub in The Shining. Like, that's not where you want to live. You want to live in the optimized space. So your book is so great, because when you have published research, providers can't argue with that. They can say they're not legit studies, but when you throw study after study after study, there comes a point when they're like, maybe I should start learning this. And,
I love that. It's so true.
It's a shame that, we have to be the alchemists here, but at the same time, somebody's got to do it, because medical schools aren't changing anytime soon. We're working on that, but I agree with you. I think the biggest regret after the Women's Health Initiative is the gap in thyroid education and care. It's profound.
Yeah,
Absolutely
really is.
Profound.
And I wish we were in a place that we could sit back and passively just hand over our care to our clinicians.
Yeah.
That is not the case. We have to be informed, empowered consumers of our thyroid health, for sure. And I love that you're giving the space and the opportunity for people to know and get empowered.
Yes. So, okay, I have just one or two more questions. So,
Shoot.
Talk to me about really some of the diet tips that women can bring into their toolbox, and also what nutrients women can bring that you see that are so commonly deficient in women with Hashimoto's or suboptimal thyroid function.
Yeah. So we tend to test everyone for food inflammatory results so that we don't unnecessarily take away foods and food groups, meaning we don't over restrict these people who, again, are already they're just struggling to live life, right? But there are patterns, like absolute undeniable patterns that we've seen in testing thousands and thousands of people with Hashimoto's for inflammatory foods. Number one most inflammatory food group is dairy. I know most people think it's gluten. I would have thought that too until our data showed us otherwise. Number two is gluten. Number three is legumes. Number four is grains. Number five is eggs. And number six is nuts and seeds. By the time you get down to nuts and seeds, it's 5% of people. So people are like, oh my God, what am I going to eat? That's descending order. You don't need to get rid of all of those. So often what I tell people is, look, check your antibodies. If you have Hashimoto's on day 0, pick a food group. I would start with gluten or dairy. Do that for 90 days. It takes about 60 to 90 days to really reset that inflammatory response. Then recheck your antibodies on day 90 and see if they've reduced. This is an objective, measurable change. It's not abstract. It's like concrete. If it changes and it lowers, continue on. If it doesn't, pick another food group. Do the opposite of gluten or dairy, whatever you did before, and work that way. And most people see a significant antibody drop just from one of those two things. It doesn't have to be all the things, right? And then some common nutrient deficiencies are definitely selenium. So selenium helps thyroid conversion. It also can reduce antibodies in 3 months, magnesium, and often even ferritin. So it's nice to try and supplement with a little magnesium, supplement with a little selenium, get it checked, and definitely be tracking your ferritin.
So where are you on the iodine spectrum too? Because it's something I'm always so conservative with. You want to be so careful, but at the same time, I see it, treat breast tenderness with hormones and treat thyroid conditions. So,
yeah. So I'll tell you, I think we do not use iodine supplementation at Modern Thyroid Clinic. It is fairly rare in America. I can't speak for outside of America, but in America to be truly iodine deficient, testing is not an easy thing to do to get accurate testing. And so basing iodine supplementation on testing is tough because it's just wildly inaccurate most of the time. And I was resistant to the model of iodine removal to reduce antibodies for a while. And then I used it with a few of my patients who had gotten stuck for years at a consistent antibody level. And instead of giving them iodine, we actually removed iodine exposure from their environment. And it was fascinating to see antibodies drop that hadn't dropped and reduced in years. I know. It was pretty interesting, I'm not going to lie. And I've seen it consistently now. And part of what I do is I'll try something with a patient population and I'll analyze the data and I'll see if it works, right? I've definitely seen people get worse Hashimoto's with supplementing iodine. Undeniable, I've seen that. Didn't expect to see the reverse where I actually saw them reduce antibodies and reduce Hashimoto's, and I did. So it's kind of undeniable for me. So we do not subscribe to supplementing iodine. If someone had breast tenderness, etc., I would probably detox their estrogen or balance their progesterone to address that in a different way.
So what is the mechanism behind removing iodine altogether? How is it inflaming the thyroid or causing antibodies to go up?
It's interesting. I should look at the exact mechanism of action of what is it doing, but definitely higher iodine exposure increases Hashimoto's risk and severity. Those two things are correlated very, very closely. So I've even seen it take people who did not have Hashimoto's and put them into a Hashimoto's state by adding in iodine. And certainly people who baseline have Hashi can get worse. We're so careful with it because it's included in Nutrafol, which I kind of love for hair loss, you know? But we have to be really diligent and make sure people's antibodies don't increase. So it is something that while I know it's very hip in certain subsets of the thyroid world, I've seen it do a fair amount of damage. And so I just steer clear.
Fair enough. And circling back to diet, do you find that people who are with antibodies who are sensitive to gluten and dairy, is that a lifelong elimination?
Good question. Okay, I'm going to get my little yerba mate over here and I'm going to give you an analogy. So I love yerba mate. This is not an ad, but I drink it every day. Okay, so I want you to think about inflammation like water or yerba mate in a cup. Okay, and every bit of inflammation we get is a drop of water in that cup. And when the cup overflows, we experience symptoms of inflammation or autoimmunity. Okay, what's happening with a lot of people with Hashimoto's, Graves', they're walking around and their cup is completely full. So one little drop of inflammation, one little drop of gluten creates this inappropriate eruption of overflow, right? We should deal with the cup's level of inflammation easily. So what you can do with people who are obviously not celiac, right? Not celiac, but gluten intolerant people, etc. You can go on a gluten-free, dairy-free, whatever it is, diet or lifestyle for 6 to 12 months. What you're doing is you're dropping the water level in your cup this low, so that when you're exposed to gluten or dairy, or you go out and have a 4th of July barbecue and have a margarita or two, you get a drop of water in that cup, and guess what? It doesn't create that eruption of overflow and symptomology.
Yeah.
It just adds another drop of water into your cup, and that's the goal. The goal is people can live their life not in a bubble, trying to isolate and control all of every variable in their life so that they can feel good. The goal is that they're walking around and they're living freely, and they're kind of 80-20, 75-25% of the time good versus just living life. And that's the way it should be. That is the way that people should be able to experience the world.
Amen. Okay, I am so stoked for your book to come out. I will shout it from the rooftops when it does. It's going to be such an incredible tool for every human out there, men and women with thyroid conditions. Thank you for the incredible work you do in the world, McCall. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me and allowing me to share it.
If you loved this episode, follow or subscribe to the Midlife Realignment wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube, and leave a review to help other women find this show.